Hello, juniors. It's time for a video lecture. Today, we're going to spend some time talking about burnout, stress management, and self-care. You will often hear your instructors, myself included, talking quite a bit about the importance of self-care throughout the entire time that you're in our social work school program. We have come to recognize as professionals, having worked in the field for as long as we have, that you cannot do this work in an effective way, in a healthy way, unless you learn how to recognize the signs of stress, burnout, and to actually have an active plan in place to actually make sure that you are doing things that are going to be beneficial to your own health, to your own peace of mind. So this is why this is a very important series and why we place quite a bit of emphasis on making sure that the concepts of self-care are understood and are actually adhered to while you're in the program. So bear with me and we will get started with our lecture series. Self-care and professional burnout. So let's spend some time talking about what those things actually are and where we see them. And think about, as we're having this conversation, uh, apply some of these things to you. Ask yourself some of these questions. Be introspective as it relates to where you are in your life, the kinds of things that you're actually doing now, and are you in the best position, or are you doing all of the things that you could be doing to make sure that you take better care of yourself and to avoid professional burnout. So keep that in mind as we move through the lecture this evening. Let's talk about burnout. Have you ever been in situations where you were going into an agency or going into an organization and you were wanting to get some assistance, or you were looking at accessing services, and you meet people that don't seem to be all that interested in the work that they do? They could be short with you, fairly direct, or just downright rude in terms of how they speak to you or how they treat you in terms of your time there, as well as you notice that it's not just you, that it's everybody who's come in the door since you've been there. This is the kind of response that they find themselves entering into. Chances are that particular person or that individual is suffering from what's here on the screen, and that's called burnout. And we're going to talk a little bit more about burnout and some of the things that might cause it from an individual standpoint, as well as looking at some of the organizations that we find ourselves sometimes connected to. So think about this definition that is here on the screen, and think about how many times you've been in situations where you may have actually experienced this coming from other professionals that you work with, or whether you may even find yourself at this particular point in time in your life with school and all the demands that are there, that could this be an issue for you as well? So again, when we think about the causes, we can just take a few minutes here and examine what's here on the screen. There are any number of things that can start this process. And if you think about burnout and stress, think about it as the result of cumulative activities or situations or stressors that you're actually experiencing over time. And not being able to effectively deal with them would actually result in what we do call burnout, and just really not being effective in terms of taking care of yourself or being reliable for the clients that you work with as well. So these are some of the causes that happen oftentimes in work situations or in school situations that might actually lead people to that. And so as you review those, think about whether these are things that are relevant for you or people who you know and that you've come in contact with. There are also other causes. I mean, because when you start to look at this whole notion of stress management and burnout, what we're wanting you to do is to really think globally and realistically. If we think about the systems perspective and try to integrate that into our learning, think about what's happening in your microsystem. Think about what's happening in your mesosystems. So as you think about how you transact business across both of those particular systems, and look at some of the causes that are listed here. For example, um, the first one, which talks about personal conflicts, job, it talks about marriage, it talks about health or financial issues. Those are all parts of your systems that could be actually contributing to the stress that you might be experiencing or the burnout. So when you look at this list and you think about your own work situation and you think about the things that might be happening for you, um, these are things that you have to think about and take into consideration as actual causes of the stress that you may be experiencing. And then there are individual factors I think that we need to spend a little bit of time too, because sometimes I think our own personalities and how we see um, the work that we approach or the things that we do or the ways that we connect with others, we sometimes can become our own worst enemies. It's no secret that it's often that there are many folks who are in the social work field who have a very difficult time saying no. And while we like to be responsive and we're interested in things and we really want to be a benefit to those who we connect with, it's not always very realistic to think about being all things to all people. So again, when you look at the individual factors, how do you contribute to your own level of stress? And some questions to ask yourself. So do you have a difficult time taking a vacation, taking a break, stopping and just doing something that's different for yourself? Are you a person that needs to have positive feedback all the time um, about the type of work that you're doing or how well you're progressing? Are you feeling overwhelmed? I mean, is it actually really happening? Are you being asked to do more in these work times with this economy? It's not unusual for people to have larger amounts of work and fewer resources to actually do that. And then are you feeling discouraged? Are you fairly self-critical? A lot of people are very difficult and hard on themselves and feel like they always have to score a 90 when sometimes a 70 is adequate. So again, looking at those individual factors that contribute as well are parts of looking at what causes stress and what causes burnout. Self-care is what we spend a lot of time talking about in terms of looking at these things and looking at this whole notion as a preventative activity, and it's a priority, and it really does have to be a priority for you. And in our field, we have to recognize that it's a two-way street. And helping clients is what we are here to do, but we also have to learn to help ourselves, and we have to be able to balance those things. So when we're thinking about self-care, this is the formula, and this is why it's so important. So it's about taking action to change, recognizing the signs of stress and its impact on you, and remembering that you have control over yourself. Oftentimes, I think, based on a variety of situations we find ourselves in, whether it might be being overwhelmed at school, having really unrealistic expectations at work, or having very demanding children, or circumstances at home, at the end of the day, you still have control over you. And it's about being able to exert that control in ways that are going to be more positive for you instead of always trying to be all things to all people. Look at what's working for you and look at what's not working. If you've been involved in trying to resolve circumstances or situations or problems in a certain way and you continue to get the results that are not satisfactory to you, then the question might be, why are you continuing to do those things that we know aren't successful? So again, when we're looking at self-care, it's really a self-reflective piece in terms of looking at all of the things that might be contributing to where it is you are. Looking at this particular list also, are you structuring your life to prevent burnout, to make sure that you don't overload yourself? Are you talking to people? Are you utilizing supervision and consultation? So, if you're, for example, struggling in the social work program at Scholastica, who are you talking to about it? Are you getting some guidance around those things? And then I think you have to also be careful about who you get the information from as well. Do you want someone who's going to just kind of sing the praises and talk about things that are not working, or you want someone who's going to give you constructive, real feedback that really helps you take a look at your contributions to the stressful situation as well. So again, these are things that you'll have to really look at and examine as you think about self-care and what's going to happen for you. So as you're thinking about putting together your own self-care plan, which you will continue to probably need to modify, it's about looking at all of those aspects as well. And then incorporating the things in your life that do work. If you're a person who has a faith belief or spiritual, that could be a source of self-care for you. How you solve problems, use of humor, whether you're taking adequate care of yourself, whether you have healthy outlets and friendships, whether you have good love relationships, whether you have a balance between work and leisure. All these are things that you will have to really recognize and plan for in terms of looking at how to manage your stress. And recognize that, you have to recognize that stress does not control you, you control it. It's going to be, somebody's going to be on the top, and you should be in control of what's happening in your life. And most of the time, you actually are. Being able to use self-talk and to really look at what you're doing and recognize what your limitations are. Don't work outside of the scope of what you're prepared to actually do. Remember that there's no single cause. It's usually a combination of individual, interpersonal, and organizational factors that can lead you to this particular place. And then you need to understand how these factors help you learn how to prevent or cope with burnout. This is probably the most important slide there. You're your own best friend. And when the chips are down and there's no one else to rely on, you've got to be able to rely on yourself. And so learn to take care of you. Become your own best friend. I want to switch screens for a moment and talk a little bit about the self-care plan. We recognize that there is an assignment that's coming due fairly shortly around that. And so to help as you're preparing for the completion of your plan, I thought I would share with you and just kind of walk through my plan that I put together a while back. And so if you look at the different components of the self-care plan, it starts out with your strengths. And so these are strengths that I recognized about myself in terms of how I actually process and did things. So I have good organizational skills. I'm always looking for a challenge. I try to work out and stay healthy, so I'm at the gym at the Y every other day or so. And then I have also a history of being a good student. I've done this before throughout my academic career from kindergarten up until now. And so I've got that to back on. So those are the strengths that I have. The barriers to my learning is that there are times when I just occasionally procrastinate. I'll put stuff off to the last moment and then wonder about why it's not gotten done, or getting really frustrated or having high anxiety because I'm reaching a deadline. And then sometimes I'm not always aware of my stress. Sometimes I'll have to rely on others to go like, or tell me, Richard, you're not looking so hot today, or tell me what's going on. And then I also struggle with the social work piece around always saying no. I have a difficult time just not being able to be in a position to always help people, even though I know that that's unrealistic. So when you're looking at constructing your own self-care plan, what it is you really want to do is you want to look at the strengths that you possess and figure out, are there ways that I could use these to address the barriers that I actually have? And so the strengths, can become an asset for looking at the barriers, which are the things that actually are a barrier to my education and to my well-being. So when I look at my goals and I put them together, I look at it from this standpoint. So my first goal is to organize my school assignments and my schoolwork. I need to lay it out, have a grid, have things put in place, calendars marked up, so I'll know what stuff is due, when it's due, what kind of expectations are there, and then I'm going to monitor that at least once a week, and I'm going to update things. So as things change, but I'm going to be looking in that book to make sure that I'm on top of stuff. And I'm going to do this, and some of the steps that I'm going to do is I'm going to create a list, a to-do list. I'm going to keep it by my desk, by my books. I'm going to color code it, and so when I've completed a task, I can mark it off, and I'm going to save that piece. And so those are things that I know that I can do that will help reduce some of those barriers around procrastination. So I've got APA papers that I've got to do, and I don't type, as I indicated in my barriers, where it talks about poor typing skills and not always aware of those things. And so if I can't type, I do the old hunt and peck method. Then that means that it's going to take me longer to actually finish my paper. So if I got a 20-page paper, then what I'm going to do is 11 days before that paper is due, is I'm going to start working on that assignment. And so I'm going to set myself a bar of 2 pages a night. So I'll do 2 pages each night until I get to day 10, and then on the final day I'll actually look at that paper to review it, to rough draft it, to make sure that it meets the APA requirements, and that's how I'm going to get that paper done. And so if I have multiple papers in multiple classes, I'm going to do the same thing. So I might have several papers going at the same time. So this way I don't lend myself into getting into that procrastination. And then even though I can't type really well, I'm doing it in over a period of time that will allow me to do it in a much more convenient way. And I'm going to also check my syllabus and list the assignments and due dates and start those papers on time. Finally, I'm going to also then look at the physical pieces that I need to do. I'm going to be working out every other hour. I'm going to read my devotional. I'm going to spend some time meditating at the beginning of the day. And at least every other day I'll put that in my schedule, and at least 10 minutes a day I'm going to get my adequate rest. I'm going to eat right. I'm going to go to sleep at least 5 days out of the week. So now how am I going to make sure that all of those particular things happen? Well, that's where my social support system actually comes in. These are the goals that I have, and so my wife Linda is going to actually resume a whole lot of the day-to-day parenting stuff. So she's going to deal with the kids and the homework and getting dinner and stuff together, those kind of things, so that I can concentrate on working on my school assignments. I'm also going to give her a copy of this plan because she knows that I have a hard time saying no. So as I experience things at school or at work, I'm going to run them by her to say, like, make sure that I'm not overextending myself. I'm going to go to church on Sunday, and then I'm going to give other members of my family and coworkers and other students a copy of my plan, and they're going to check in with me every week to make sure that I'm actually doing what I say that I'm doing. So I have some accountability built in. So that's my plan, and so I hope that you find that it's helpful for you as you start to put together your own plan, but making sure, again, that your strengths and your barriers are identified, and making sure that you utilize your strengths in ways in your goal development and your planning to make sure that you can actually create goals that are realistic, that you can accomplish, that actually have some evaluation pieces and some backbone in terms of making it more than just a piece of paper that has some things that we may or may not do, but really having it be a working contract and treatment plan for yourself to take much better care of yourself. So again, I hope that you find this helpful and useful as you continue to journey on into social work. I thank you for your time and attention, and I will see you in class.